Warning, and I'm being recorded now, which is cool. All right, so the value that we're highlighting right here, this is what we call a max int, or maximum integer. And when I started programming in college, my numbers couldn't get this high in a single value. It was 327.67, which would be a lot smaller than that. And the number that we've got when we're using online GDB is much smaller than 327.67. And you get to know these numbers based on whatever machine you're programming. So I can return a 255. That's the highest number that I can bring up in as an integer value in this world. So if I run this, we're going to see a return down here of 255, which matches the return statement here. And if I add just one more, so 255 plus 1, and I run that, you'd think, oh, 256. But no, because of the limitations of the computer, the value that gets returned is a 0. So that's because, as we looked in that game we were playing, let's see here, Control H, binary game, when you look at the actual values, 255 is one less than 256. So basically, if all of these are fired up, you're going to get a value of 255. Now, the other thing is they'll be in a pattern of sets of 4 and 4 for a total of 8 bits. How do I want you guys to convert between binary and base 10? Do I want you to use the binary game? Do I want you to write it out on a piece of paper? There is a different way to do that. Let's take a look here at the calculator built into Windows. And if you don't have the Windows-based computer, you won't have the benefit of this. But you'll notice if I put in a decimal value like 255, that the binary value here is what we call high values, or all ones. So if you add one more to that, it tries to roll over, and that's why you end up at a 0. So there's a limitation. And he shows you with the marble machine, there's a physical limitation where it rolls over and it sets to all 0. Same thing is true electronically or digitally. So if you're going to have an ammo count that goes above this, or a number of lives, or any other whole number in your games, you got to understand that the maximum value of your integer, if it's bigger than whatever your computer can handle, you got to do something special to handle it. When they designed and built the Pac-Man game in the arcades, they didn't expect that people would figure out there's a pattern. But I actually got a book out of the library on it when I was a kid, and actually memorized the pattern. And it was one pattern for the first two, and then you had to change your pattern, and it went back and forth between a couple of patterns. And if you were focused enough, and if you were attentive enough, you could get up to level 255. And the Pac-Man game had a limit. Oh, you did learn, okay. Level 255, and see if there's anything about a video on there.
You're here, so I'll be able to.
All right, if you mess it up, I get to go. Okay. So I'll hit the mute here, because basically he's going to be using the pattern, and we want to jump in here. Yep, there we go. So when he gets past 255, it glitches out. So when you're playing this on an emulator, it looks a little different. And not many people are going to have access to an arcade game like this to see it. But the whole point is that it exceeded the limits of the machine. All right. That's the thing about these patterns, is like, if you don't stay on top of them, you will forget them. Same with the binary ones. So I wanted you to go through, that was the activity for the day, so you'll owe me a comment on that. And the next thing I was going to do is I want to survey. I want to find out if people are ready for me to start covering loops. So I'm going to start a custom poll here. And let's say, are you good to go on loops? Would you like more practice with if? If you don't know, or I am lost. Let's see what else. Or not a good day. Either way. Whatever. I'm just trying to think of some of the responses. I get people, small group, but sometimes over a larger group, you get something. So you want to go on to loops. You want to practice with if. You don't know, or you're lost. It's not a good day. Whatever. All right, so we're kind of split between more practice with if and good to go on to loops. Now, here's the thing: is if the if statements and the looping are almost the same. So even if we get more practice with an if statement, it's actually going to help you with loops. So I don't know how much time I've spent with multiple conditions. And I want to do a little bit with if then else, etc. I'm going to get rid of all the comments here. This is just going to be like a romper room for your use. I will give you a copy of this at the end so you can play with it. And this is basically the smallest C program in the world. Does anyone have any questions about what's going on here with the online coder? Let me know. Be happy to answer any questions. You can open your mic and ask a question. So if I run this, I will see the output down below. And every time this runs, it's going to print hello world no matter what. No matter, because no other conditions. There's nothing else we're keeping track of. But let's set up a couple of things. Let's say, for example, let's just say, how about if we ask for the user to give us a number? How about if we say, guess my number? What is your guess? So now we're going to have to bring in a number, right? So we need to set up two things. One is the number that we want them to guess, and the other is the one that they guessed. Since these are going to be numbers, I'm going to call this secret number. And what do we want to set that to? Does anybody have a secret number or a special number they want to do? Put it in public chat. I got an answer here. 42 and 7, either one. For now, 42 got in there first, so yep, I'm going to throw 42 in. And so this 42 here is being stored in memory. Now I want something that they're going to give me. And I'm going to start out by just pretending that they're going to start at 0. And now you can set up some rules like it's got to be a positive number. It's between 1 and 100, something like that. Right, so about number between 0 and 100. Yeah, that's probably a good range, right? That's my number. Guess what my number? There we go. What's your guess? So now how do I bring something in? I got to do a scanf. And I have to tell it in the format of a number. So that's %i. And I need to put that into a location. So I need to say put it in the address of their guess, which is already highlighted up there. So now I've got two numbers in memory. I've got my secret number and their guess. What are the possibilities? Now this is pseudocode. Either they got it, oops. Oh, that just brought in a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't want. All right, either they got it too high or they're too low. So now we can do this with 3 different if statements, or we could do an if then else. We could say if it's equal to it, congratulations, you guessed it. Else, if it's too high, say you guessed too high. Else, if it's too low, say it's too low. So we could do it with 1 if and 2 elses. And I don't think I've shown you this before. So I'm going to set up some conditions here. If, an if statement has a sandwich. So the first thing is going to be if secret number is equal to their guess. You can do this in either order, and we should tell them they got it. Some kind of celebration thing, right? Confetti, woohoo, you got it. Yes. And maybe we'll go down a line just to make sure it looks a little neater. And put a semicolon there. Now, the next thing is I'm going to copy this so I can repeat it. So I'm going to do a Control-C for copy. That's the first situation. And the next thing I'm going to do is, before the if, I'm going to put the word else. That means if the first one wasn't true, I'll check the next one. If the secret number is, let me do, I don't know, greater than? If the secret number is greater, then they guessed too low. So I'm going to do like this, like too low. Now, I know it's weird. I'm using greater than, but basically the order in which I put them, I put too low. And now I'm going to do a third one. Now, this is kind of easy because there's just one thing happening. If I was doing multiple lines, I'd want to add some more. We'll work with indenting in a minute. So we'll flip this from greater than to less than. And if the secret number is there, then they guessed too high. So I want the format of my response to kind of visually match them for high. So I'm looking for a keyboard that will end up, yeah, there we go. It's not really higher, but there's no way to put a key at the very top, is there? Well, what if I did some special code like Alt 1? And I'm just trying to make it look kind of cute with some kind of like special character here. Now this is a special character. I held down the Alt key and I put in like 154 just to try something that looks weird on the keyboard, because I can do that in this world. All right, so let's go ahead and try the code and see if it works. We should ask the user for a number. Let's try it. Oops, I'm still in demo mode. Let me get back to a mouse pointer. Let's run this. I've got an error. Not surprising. Stray backslash in the program. Oh, it's not inside the quotes. Now, if you get an error message and you're not sure what's going on, if you'll notice here, it's got the line number. And if you click on that, it should bring you right to it. So line number 10, position 28. So there's 10. And if I come over 28, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It says, dude, what's this backslash n doing over here? That needs to be on the inside of the quotes. And now it's going to handle it. And because I copied and pasted the line, I'll need to change the line below it as well, because this one's also going to be misplaced. And this one down here is also going to be misplaced. Within the quotes, backslash n, and then end the quotes. But was one error that I repeated 3 times. I'm going to go ahead and run this. So number between 0 and 100. Well, the next thing that got entered was 7. Not picking on the second number, but too low. So we guessed too low. Now, here's the thing. The if statement worked. If it had been equal, it would have said it's equal, and it would have been congratulations. Let's test it again with a number that's too high. We don't have a variable here that is being set as secret number, so let's guess 43. S was too high. We'll run it a third time just to make sure that if we put in the actual number that we see the value matched. Yes. Okay. So we've got 3 different outcomes using an if, else, and another else. If, else, if, and else if again. Now this is not pretty the way it's lined up. It's not easy to read. I'm going to try their beautify, but before I do, I'm going to try to save this and make sure I can save the work here as an example of if else. I don't want to lose my work, and I'm going to try their beautify and see if their beautify. Yes, it beautified my code when I clicked on the button. It bumped all the else ifs in so that it's easier to read. Now we can make this program look a lot better. Oh, it also changed the characters here. I wonder what too high is going to look like now, since it kind of changed the characters. That's pretty weird. So let's guess a number that's too high. Oh, just change it to a C. Okay, I like the other one better, but that's okay. It cleaned up the code. It's more digestible. All right. Where do we want to go from here? We could continue to change this code a little bit so that it brings in a dynamic number. Would you like to see like a random number being positioned and then you have to guess it? Does that sound interesting? Yeah. All right, I see a mouth moving, but the mic is muted. But I see what you're saying there. Let me make sure you guys are unlocked here. Nobody's muted. Unlock all those values and apply that. There you go. All right. I haven't done a random number in this system before. So, boy, let's try a different one. Int test, send the value of random. Now, for a random, we need to tell it what the range is. So if you're going to roll a dice, how many sides are on a dice? We got 6. Good. So we would actually could say, for example, 6 is going to find a value between 0 and 5. That's how computers work. I'm just going to add 1. And let me see if I can print that out. Sorry, I'm off by a little bit. Printf. I don't know if this is going to even compile, so don't get excited yet. I'm talking to myself more than anything. And I should go down a line here just to keep things neat. All right, I'm going to try this. Rand was not declared in the scope. Interesting. So I need to figure out what header file holds rand for random. So let's C++ command rand is in which header file? I think it's math.h, but I got to find out. Oh, cstdlib. Okay. So I'm going to need to include this library here. So let me see if I can copy that so I spell it right. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Let's see if adding that file does it. Too many arguments. All right, so I'm just trying to see. Basically, it choked on my function call here. It said, I don't like what you're trying to do there. I'm going to see if I can take a closer look at this Google help here and see if it helps me remember something I need to do. There we go. They're doing, oh, it's okay. So it's basically this modulus value, not a plus. Okay. So I'm going to steal this line of code. I know what it does, but I'm just going to steal this line of code. So I'm going to do a copy here, and I'm going to put the result of it here, and I'm going to paste it right below to compare them, and I'll show you how off I was. Oops, Control-Z in that. Let's see where I was off. We both declared a variable. I forgot that instead of doing the +1 here, a better method is to start out with 1 and add. You got the random number. Now I tried setting the range there, but what I want to do is set the range on the other side of this, divide evenly by it. 6 would be good, but let's try 100 because that's the number we really want to do. This sample we grabbed was for a roll of a dice. Now we got a 0 to 100. Should we probably have 1 to 99? 1 to 101 is what I have here. Think about that. 0. Do we want 0 to be valid? We would take away this 1 if we wanted to. Let's try this. Yay, I got past that error message. So it picked a random number and we got 84. So this would be more interesting, right? So it will pick a random number. If I don't print it out, I won't know what it is. So now we've got a line of code that will do a random number. I'm still running, so I have to do an escape here or stop. Now what I want to do is I'm going to grab this super long link here, copy it, and I'm going to drop it into a comment, which is going to be a super long comment. But I think it's important that if you open the source file, you can get to the actual place it came from. So this is going to be a comment in the middle here. I'm going to paste a super long comment. So that I'm citing the source there on where I got the random number. And if you want to look at it and explore that further, you can. I'm going to save my work before I do anything else because I don't want to lose this. And I can actually share the code that I've got right here. So I'm going to grab a copy of it. And I'm going to pop that into the chat here. So you can actually follow along and grab a copy of the code by grabbing the link from chat. And it should open up a copy of the code that you can do a save as with. Now, I'm not using secret number for a random number. I'm using a different one called test. So I want you to update the code so that it uses the word test instead of secret number. And then run it and see if you can guess the number, and run it again and see if you get a different number every time you run it with this random. So while you're doing that, that's all I'm going to do is make a change here on my side to try to do the same thing. Yes, it is. It's stuck on 84, isn't it? So let's talk about this. The reason it's stuck on 84 is explained in the website that I've got up, and that's the reason I put it into a link for you. So I'm going to try to change the zoom here. Now, this is an interesting site because you can copy these examples and put them into your code and play with it. And some of these examples include loops, which I'm not really talking about, but I want you to understand samples of things like comparing two values in an if statement that we can use for an if. So in the example here, which is very similar, give me a second here. This is going to give you a number that'll be the same every time the program runs. So when we do a random and we don't put anything in around it, it's going to give us the same number every time. That's for testing so that you can actually get the same random number every time. When you really want a random number, you need to add some reference to something that's never going to be the same every time. And this is true especially in gambling machines, like out at in Vegas or in these video gaming things. You want a real random number, one that's not going to follow a pattern so people can't pick up on the patterns. So one of the ways that we can do that is by actually including a reference to the time. Now, the time on the computer is going to vary based on exactly when you hit the enter key. And the odds of people hitting it at the same time as any other time when you're dealing with a clock on a computer is pretty minuscule, so it's very random. So this method here is going to give us a more random number. So I'm going to grab this quote, copy this code right here, and I'm going to jump into online GDB. Let me make sure I save this. Let's start a new project. I think I'm zoomed in too much to see it. There we go. Create new project. I'm going to paste this in here. And I'm just going to try it and see what happens. So this program worked fine in online GDB. And what it does, it's not documented very thoroughly, and it doesn't have any couts to help you. But basically, it's printing out a series of random values in a range up to 35. So if we wanted this to be something up to 100, we would put 100 here. We would change that value from 35 to 100. And if I run it again, the range will be up to 100. So this is some sample code that we found on the web, and let's talk about what it does. This is a special word here. Basically, it's called seed a random using time. We talked about the time from the computer, meaning now, and we're saying use that as a seed to generate a random number. So without getting into too much details on cryptology and encoding and random numbers, this is a methodology where you can basically take the time of the clock to seed or come up with a starting point for your pattern. This is the range right here. So let me add a comment in here. Now this is using a loop, and I haven't talked about loops, so it kind of snuck into this particular area. So the range here is 100. This is what we call an offset so that we don't use 0. All right. This is a looping structure right here, which if you've used programming in the past, you may or may not recognize. It's actually got 3 statements within one. And when you see these semicolons here, it's basically saying start at that point. Well, this part is true, which is a lot like an if statement, but it'll continue. And every time you do what's below, change something by this value. And that's saying add 1 to it every time. So we start at 0. Well, it's less than 10. So 0 through 9 times, which is a total of 10, it's going to print out the number. If we change this range so that it's 100, I'm now going to run this loop not 10 times, but 100 times. So the output will be 10 groups of numbers on the screen between the range of 1 to 100. Let's see here. If I scroll up, it's hard to tell on this screen, but basically we've got more. Now when there's C out, are they doing down a line? Yeah, they do end line. So this goes down a line. If I didn't do it that way, if I just tabbed over with a tab character, it would put them on the screen a little bit easier to see. It won't go down a line. So let me try this version with the tab character, and you'll see the numbers spill out on the screen. It'll wrap around. So there's our 100 values. So we could also, again, change the code so it does it 1,000 times. Remember, computers are really good at doing the same thing over and over again very quickly. So now we got 1,000 random numbers. So what if we did it 10,000 times? Now we run it 10,000 times. How many times do you think the number 42 shows up in there? Do you think it shows up at all? It might. So here's another thing we can do with this is we can basically say within here, now instead of just doing one number, or one line I should say, we're doing multiple things. This is our open curly brace right here that says I'm going to do everything within here 1,000 times. While I'm in there, after I've counted that number, I can say if that random number is equal to 42. Remember, I want the literal on the left, so I'm going to say if 42 is equal to random number, only then I'll cout. Since they're using cout, I'll just follow suit. Now let's see. Let's go down a line and say hit, because we got a hit on the number we're looking for. And we'll go down a line again, and we'll just do a semicolon there. So if we see the random number, we're just going to say hit on the screen. So let's run it again and see how many hits we get on the number 42. There's one there. There's one there. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I think we hit that quite a few times. So within 10,000 random numbers, we hit 42 a number of times. But we can't tell how many right now. So let's actually set up a hit counter to keep track of how many times we actually got to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have both lines in here now. I'll say hit, and I'm also going to do a second thing, which is going to be hit counter. I'm going to add one to it. Have I talked about the plus plus operator or not? Does anyone know what it is? So let me ask this: what does hit counter plus plus do? Could someone tell me? Increments by 1. Good. All right. So everybody got that. So basically, what I need to do is before I start trying to add this up, I need to make sure I've got something called hit counter that's set up. So right up here next to random number, I'm going to set up another integer number called hit counter. And I'm going to follow good practice and put a 0 in there so I know it starts out with a 0. In fact, if I do this in the opposite order, I add one to my counter first and then print my line out. I can say hit, and I can say hit counter. Put it on the line again. So now every time it hits, it'll tell me how many in a counter. Let's try this version. Line 22. Okay. So I've got one more curly brace I need to put in here. I messed up on. And I have been pretty happy with the, let's see, we'll call this random number experiment. So I wanted to save that before I hit this beautify just in case, but that will line up all of our curly braces for us. I want to make sure this actually does what I think it's going to do, so I need to get the scroll bar moving for me. I have some issues sometimes when I'm zoomed in getting this to work the way I want it to. Home. Sorry, guys, a little awkward there. All right, so if 42 is the random number, I'm going to add 1 to it and then cout that value. And I would like this to be lined up a little bit better like that, so I can see where everything lines up. That's going to end this is going to end the for loop, and that's going to end main. Okay, let's run that. Did we get any hits? 111 times. So we actually came up with 42 111 times. I would not have seen that by scrolling through. Nor would have I had any idea that if I ran something 10,000 times that I would hit 42 111 times. Just kind of weird to me that that's what that word that turns up that often. All right. I'll share this code with you as well. This is just something, again, for you to experiment with. I want you to be comfortable grabbing code, use the source. I'll pump out this source for you on random numbers and this code, and I'll have you guys play with it. I don't want to take up too much of your time this morning. Do make sure you give me a response on the binary thing. I'm hoping that people that are behind are getting those assignments turned in. And let's take a look if I put anything in the shared notes there. I didn't even start recording this at all. I'll have to record third session today. Yeah, I didn't even put anything in the shared notes. So if you're missing anything, send me an email today. Let me know what's going on with anything from week 1, 2, and 3, because we're starting week 5 pretty soon here. Interesting. Okay. All right. I'm going to save the usernames. All right. Thank you to Jacob, and Kenneth. And I know we had another person pop in for a little bit. Do you guys have any questions? You can use your mics. You can. All right. Well, it's getting cooler out there, but if you have some time between classes, stretch your legs, go pet the dog, or breathe in some fresh cold air. All right. Wake up a little bit. Thanks for hanging out with me a little bit today. Enjoy your weekends, and we'll catch up next week. Okay. Be well. Bye.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Yeah, done. Session 2, random numbers.